evening. You're listening live to the Xtreme Movie Show, our special edition of Kicking It, where we're doing Nick Cage's movie Primal. I'm Rob, your host. My guest this evening, as usual on Kicking It, is the real Dr. V. Good evening, Doctor.
How's it going, sir?
It's going good. I understand you had some medical emergencies you had to deal with over on the farm there, being the fact that you had like a 20-degree high and probably, I think, a 0 degree Fahrenheit or Celsius for you Canucks out there. And I hope you're doing well, sir. I hope you didn't get any frostbite.
Yeah, I'm doing all right. It's only wind chill of 4, so it's all right. And
But
this
it's a
time,
balmy for.
the great thing is that you don't have to use your chest freezers anymore. You can just throw the call outside and it freezes by itself.
Well, we're going to have a talk about what temperature does to medicine, and that's going to be the doctor's quick fix of the evening here as we talk about Nick Cage's Primal. Over here in the Pine Hills Palace, where we're broadcasting from, I got to sit here and say it's a balmy 77, but it's a dry 77, and the sun just set, so it's nice.
Oh,
So for
you poor
us,
thing.
it's tough, when you have all these bullets flying around, and Max and Daisy, the German shepherds patrolling the grounds, are keeping us safe, so we have the opportunity to stay alive and get this podcast going. I mean, that's the important thing because we can't do enough Chuck Norris movies or martial arts movies. We have to do some other action ones. So we decided to do a schlocky movie, a movie that an 8-year-old child could sit down and watch and not get scared. I think, but then I'm no millennial, no child today, so I don't know what they would think. But Primal, initial thoughts.
Well, I can see this. I know a lot of kids that watch horror movies when they're like 6 or 7 years old. It hasn't really changed. It's just I mean, if you don't think SpongeBob's scary, then you can watch this.
Yeah, I think there's cartoons out there. Certainly, Ren and Stimpy's a lot more violent than this movie here. And all I kept hearing about was this Nick Cage movie. It's going to be like Taken versus snakes on a plane, sort of on a boat with animals. And I'm like, okay, that's a cool little hook. So the idea is that he's this big game hunter, comes across the one, the unicorn, the one in a million type animal. It's going to net him $1 million, buy him his dreams. This white jag, or as the British would say, jaguar, and some other animals too. And so, of course, it's supposed to be this tight little thriller. So my initial thoughts are this: it's decent. If you're in a Nick Cage mood, it's very watchable. There's some entertaining scenes, but I was conflicted. I thought the movie tried to be two things: a serious thriller versus kind of a goofy, hammy Nick Cage movie. And I wish it would have made up its mind, and maybe the latter would have been better because of the animals. Um, so to me, I wish I needed more animal. That's my take.
I'll just say this: it's a Nicolas Cage movie. You know what you're getting in for. Either you
That's
hate
true.
him or you love
I know.
him. So I personally love Nicolas Cage, and I don't mind Nickelback. So screw the haters. It's like you like what you want to like.
You were going
I,
fine until you mentioned Nickelback, so let's just kind of re-steer this comment to the fact that we both like Nick Cage, so much so that we reviewed Mandy on the Extreme Movie Show. Just a fantastic movie. You loved it. I loved it. Fantastic film. This movie is just made for TV fare, although I think it was playing at a local theater like for like 1 or 2 nights. So anyway,
yeah.
Nick Cage
Well,
finds this jaguar, this white one. He gets on a boat, and of course these people show up and they get the Hannibal Lecter treatment for this British dude who's supposed to be the baddie, and of course you get the government types there, and you know what's gonna happen. So you're right, you know what you're getting yourself into. All I gotta say is it doesn't take long, of course, before the bad guy escapes from his cage. No pun intended, and no puns given actually about Nick Cage and animals, which is disappointing. Um, but what's cool is the guy who's the bad dude is like kind of smart. He's kind of with it. He lets all the animals loose, and he has a plan what he wants to do. He wants to get the boat steered to an island so he can escape. Whatever. He was an ex-government trained op, blah blah blah. You know the story. It's a 50 million Seagal type films, all right. But what's fun about this movie is when the animals started getting loose. You see a lot of people dying from these animals. I mean, they just. I,
well,
I hope PETA doesn't have an issue with this movie because
let's back.
I didn't.
I was to say let's back it up a little bit. Explain how the animals get loose. this guy was like he's like the best assassin that was working for the CIA. The CIA could control him, so they brought him back in. He's a little mental, a little unstable.
A loose cannon.
So, so yeah. So they lock him up. The guards in there, they use like the worst like military guys I've ever seen. It's like these are like rent a cops, but they're like, oh, hey, we're the best. We're the elite. No, we're Marines. Ooh-ha. It's like, but this guy outsmarts some. He fakes a seizure. The guy bites the guy's fingers off, and he shoots the other guy in the head with a gun because they both enter the cage. He's in a steel cage like Hannibal Lecter. He escapes, and then in order to cause more uh,
Chaos.
stress,
Shenanigans.
chaos. Yeah, yeah,
A
yeah. He
kerfluffle.
lets he lets all the animals that Nicolas Cage was shipping illegally to the United States or the zoos, for money. He lets them out. So one of the ship captain ends up getting bit by one of these snakes, which is poisonous. He's out there. He's basically just like seizuring it up, on his halo. While his son's like, "What's going on? I don't understand." He's like 15 years old. Um, really annoying kid. I mean, I like kids, but this kid, he could have jumped. He could have. He really didn't mean to be in the movie. He
Are
could
you
have made up
saying
a
the kid
parts.
needed to assume room temperature? Did it need to
Ah,
become worm food?
he just needed to chill out a little bit.
And for all you 8-year-olds out there listening, remember it's very important that when you move a pet from one place to another, especially from one country to another, you must have all your shots,
So
your proper paperwork.
So this guy is armed and dangerous. He's taking over the ship. Basically, he's going around, and then they run up all the civilians on the ship, and the crew and everything. And they let it, and they're supposed to be locked in his room. Well, the crew was actually wow, they're actually the smartest part of the actually everybody in there. They escape the only lifeboat there is, and they leave overnight. They're like, screw this. So the kid stays behind with his dad and Famke Janssen, who's in here, who by the way is even over how old she is, she didn't look that good in this, but man, she's so good looking. Um,
A
I think she's in her
natural
50s.
beauty, a tall talent.
Yes.
Unfortunately, I think this movie's filmed legitimately as soon as she got done having some type of facial reconstruction, plastic surgery type things. I think there's a few things going on because her nose is different, her cheeks were different, her chin was different. I don't know if
It's
she was in an accident or if it was just her age, but we're used to seeing
you,
a
I
different
think she
Famke
wasn't wearing.
Janssen than the one we saw here. It looked like all the animals ate her face
I,
off before this movie started.
it looked more like she'd been taken. No, at the doctor. Get it?
I
Because
get it,
that surgery
doctor,
was not real at
and I'm
all.
not laughing.
I'll laugh for the both of us.
Well, you do that,
But
sir.
no, but no, she wasn't really helpful in this movie. Like it basically felt like Nicolas Cage versus Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant is a great guy. If you guys have watched Swamp Thing, few series, he plays the doctor, the scientist, who ends up becoming the villain towards the end. Spoilers if you haven't watched it, but too bad. um, no, but this they had a great cast in here.
Yeah, the
They
movie's
had
well cast, and here's my problem. Even though it's a positive, it's a well shot movie. It's tight. It looks really great. It looks like a big budget film. It just, to me, the problem is it's almost done so professionally, and with this great cast and a great bad guy that you just mentioned. I just wish if they had stayed serious about it, it could have been so much better, or cheese it up like as a Nick Cage film, because about halfway through, most of the animal stuff isn't there anymore. It's him versus the bad guy. That's where I thought it could have probably stayed animal stuff, and it could have been a Nick Cage
but
classic.
but this guy, I love how he outsmart. First of all, these military guys thought they're all know-it-all. So they're like, "You're, oh, this is my ship," and Nicolas Cage's like, "Dude, you're not hunting him. He's hunting you." And they're like, and they're like, "No, you're shut up. You know what you're talking about. Go in the back there, or no." He's like, "Or I'll kill you myself. I'll put a bullet." I'm like, and Cage's like, "Whatever." Leaves. One by one, the guy takes them out one by one. Except for the last guy who's actually about to get a kill shot on him. And here comes the guy the lawyer is supposed to take him back in, the CIA guy, knifes the dude in the back of the head with a knife, just right in the back of the skull, kills him. And that guy, the bad guy, he's like turns around, he's like, oh, well, thank you, it's like because yeah,
Yeah, Nick Cage
it's
gets off some good lines in here. And the way he delivers it, you can tell he's really amping it up for the cheese factor. There's a scene in there where Famke Janssen is talking to him about being a good guy, and he's like, I'm not a good guy. I'm just a bad guy. I'm just a guy. It's like, really, Nick? Did you write that line yourself? Is that like something you reach in your back
He's like,
pocket with?
yeah,
Who
I'm not a
says he's
good guy.
gonna
This guy
hide?
wants to get paid. Yeah, I'm not a good guy person. I'm just a guy who's gonna get paid.
Yeah, yeah. So there's some really good scenes in here. There's a scene where when the animals start to get loose, um, one of the chefs gets loose, and they end up going into the brig, and he goes into a room, and he's got a bad dude with him, and he's smart. He quickly is able to shut the door and lock it so the guy can't get through, and the guy's looking at him like, oh, I'm gonna kill you, and the cook is like, F you, and he's giving him the double bird and all that. But then the problem is there's all these animals, because they're hungry, they went to go find the food, so you're like, hey, that makes sense, that's smart, right? And then of course Nick Cage gets on the horn, and he's like, what's he doing? Oh, he's trapped in with a bunch of animals. Tell him not to go for the smallest one, because he's trying to get all these animals away from his kitchen that he has this sense of ownership over. And so he starts to do that, and he picks on the small one to move. So all of them come to the defense of the small baby monkey, and they all jump on
Yeah,
him. And they mentioned this earlier. They claw the dude's face off. This was
yeah.
funny. This was very
Nicholas Cage was
entertaining.
Nicholas Cage. They tell him he's like, "Don't touch the baby. They will call your face off." Because he told it to the kid earlier in the movie. He said like the kid is like, he's like, yeah, they're very protective. They'll call your face off. He's like, he's like, big Nicholas Cage basically said back, he's like, I don't. He said to the kid, he's like, I don't really care less what happens to you.
And
Like
that's
he actually, it was so cool. It was actually like, I'm like, wow, he actually said what everyone else was thinking.
Yeah, and what I thought was neat was I thought they were setting up this movie where most of the movie was going to be about the animals. So, like for example, he talks about curare, which to me still goes back to James Bond and Octopussy when Roger Moore's at the dinner table being served like eyeballs, and the guy's like, "So what are you gonna do? You gonna kill me, torture me?" Is that and the bad dude's like, "A nice curare poison with some mild side effects." I always think of curare with that, but no, he actually is a blow dart enthusiast. Nick Cage is, and he shows you that early on, and it's kind of neat how he handles the thing, and he's very passionate about his animals that he cares about. He actually makes sure they're fed. The water's turned off and the electricity from the bad guy, but all he cares about is animals. He goes over there, he feeds them, he gives them stuff, and he's showing the kid along the way the different things about it. So it's cool because different types of animals usually respond behaviorally to different things, and I like how they didn't really see the jag until towards the very end. So as we get towards the end of this movie, basically it's Nick Cage and the bad dude, and of course most of the animals are taken care of. Um, there's some symbolic parrot bird thingy that's following him around that doesn't do anything for the movie other than do that. Um, but there's a real cool scene towards the end where he's trying to fight this bad dude, and he knows he really can't beat him one on one, so he uses his brains. So, Doctor, I know you were talking about this offline. Why don't you describe the final scene, as it were?
Uh, he basically thought how remember the monkeys he could never get close to him, so he had to use trank darts. It's called it's Kabali or Kamali, whatever he's using, and
Curari.
he dips on the he's a blow dart.
Mm-hmm.
Karari, that's what it is. Yes, Karari. So he shoots the bad guy up with the Karari, and the guy's like, what is this?" Like whatever, like he didn't know what it was. I'm thinking. So anyway, so this guy's still kicking. It takes a while for it to kick in, but pretty soon he basically becomes paralyzed, and he's like, yeah, it's Karari, asshole. It's like and he basically the guy he knocks him down. He strings him up by his legs out of the rope. And he's like, the great about things that it's like you can't move, but you're awake, so you're gonna and you're gonna basically say like, my friend over there, she hasn't been fed this whole entire time, and you're gonna help me out with this. And so he lets the white jaguar out of the cage, and and he's like, hey, you can't leave like this, He's like, yeah, we can swing deal. He's like, and then Nicolas Cage just walks away like a badass, and then here's the guy goes, ah! The tiger, no, the jaguar just jumps on his throat and just rips him apart, eats him, because it is this it takes place because what it is the way he did this, how he strung up, he fed the jaguar. That's how he caught it in the beginning of the movie. He had a goat using a tree stand, and they had it hanging there from a rope,
Yes.
you know. So
So, kids, it's very important to understand that what we're really talking about here is a circle of life. And if you understand behavior of animals and you understand how they react to things, and you can actually become in this case, a hunter, a trapper. You can be somebody that cares for animals because ultimately he turns into a good guy because he thinks about it instead of making the money with the jaguar. He decides that he's going to let it go for free on a plane in Africa to be supervised by people. So he's a nice guy. Doesn't it make you
Yes.
sick?
Uh,
And only the
he,
promise of a potential hookup with Famke Janssen later. I mean, there's no booty knocking or nothing going on
I
in
was
this.
I was gonna say that what really made me sick is like he's like I bet you I'm your kind, because you're basically your dad, your dad wouldn't approve of me, so it's basically like saying like she wants a bad boy. Well, you know,
Yeah, it's.
I'm thinking
Go ahead.
the thing that surprised me the most was when Liam Neeson came out and just shot him at the end.
Yeah, that's true. That's the alternate ending, and it made it much better and funny. No, I think for me, my final thoughts are that it's a Nick Cage movie, kinda. It could be better, and I don't mean that it's bad. It's just like I say, I actually think at times, when it's man versus man, you've forgotten about the cool scenes with the animals and the whole plot device of them being on the ship, and it's a pretty good, hunter tracker type of thing because they're both
Yeah,
smart guys. I really enjoyed that part to it. I just was under the assumption there was going to be a lot more animal food going on in here, and while there's some good use of animals in here, I just would have enjoyed more of it because it's always kind of neat when you see it, like I say, a professional, the character that's a
but
professional, like here, an
but
animal handler, just to describe what's going on with stuff, not just with the curari, but how you trap them, how everybody protects the youngest one in their group, how this one does this. That's kind of neat on how you know that that's going to tie into later in the movie. You just don't know how. So once they had gotten rid of the animals, it was kind of like, okay, now I've got to pay attention to the bad guy who's really not a bad guy. The government's really who's bad. So it's not bad. There's definitely a lot worse out there to see. And it's definitely a passable film. I wouldn't say it's extreme, but I would say it's worth a watch.
it's not extremely good and it's not extremely bad. It's in the middle, but it's still enough a fast pass action movie where you can actually get through it, and it has a happy ending. If you like, basically this being like it's like they're under a Greek freighter, basically. If you love movies that take place on ships like that, with bad versus good, it's your movie if you want to watch. Um, but it's a Nicolas Cage movie. Like I said, either you love Nicolas Cage or you hate Nicolas Cage.
Yeah, and it's a
It
Nick Cage
but it
movie.
but
That says it right there.
but this movie though isn't too much Nicolas Cage though. I'll say this though, because there's a point where you get too crazy Nicolas Cage where he just goes like perfect example would be like Con Air, where where it's like all you see is Nicolas Cage. It's every single scene is Nicolas Cage.
Right.
This is kind of like they're giving everybody's getting their own time on the screen, but
Yeah, so
yeah.
not bad. Like I said, Famke Janssen, wasted role. I think you mentioned that earlier. I agree with
Oh
you.
yes.
Don't know why that was. Maybe that's a paycheck film for her. Maybe she just
she
couldn't like move because her face was so tight.
she was playing a lame character to begin with. She was playing a psychologist. She's just there kissing the guy. He has problems, they treat him, because he said he has mental illness, the bad guy. So like she was there to make sure he's safe enough because the whole thing is they want to ship him back to America so he can stand trial. Um,
But not
yeah. So
really.
then, yeah,
He would have
not
been
not
convicted of
really. No,
war
no.
crimes in a
So
star
like
chamber,
her,
and he would have
I
been
mean, like
tortured to find out his real information. It's an Illuminati plot.
I understand the kids being. I hate the excuse. Well, he's a kid. He's supposed to be stupid. I'm like, there are adults that are stupid too. So I'm like, it doesn't make a difference what age the kid is. But the kid was just like, when his dad's in there and he runs out of the room. Like, remember the whole thing is they're supposed to stay in the room. They have the door locked.
Yeah,
Well, he just walks out
I know.
because he's like sir. He's like and he because like she's yelling him, come back. What are you doing? Like he's trying to eat, take care of his dad who's dying on the freaking table.
Hmm.
He don't care. He walks out. He's like, his basic excuse was like, going to go Nicolas Cage, like, oh, I wanted to ask about my dad. Is he going to be okay? I don't know. I'm not by your kid. I'm not by your dad. I was like, what is with this kid? Is like, who wrote this? Is this like I mean, like, was this written by Bruce Willis?
It's your typical script by number sort of thing to it. Well, let me put it to you this way. I know we had covered another movie that really wasn't that good, but I thought it was mildly entertaining. And so I'm going to put you on the spot, Doctor. Primal with Nick Cage or The Babysitter?
Why don't we combine both of them?
Yeah, because The Babysitter is mildly more entertaining just from the eye candy alone, too. But no, this is a Nick Cage movie. It's okay, guys. With all the stuff that's out there that's garbage and crap, you could do a lot worse. I'm not going to tell you, hey, you have to see it. It's okay. It's not bad.
I mean,
I, I,
I enjoyed.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say I enjoyed this movie because when I was watching this, Nicolas Cage looked he was moving and he looked younger than he is. And I guess he's only 55 years old. Some of the other ones I've seen him in his previous movies, he looked like he was in his 60s, mid 60s. This he's moving around, doing more stuff. Obviously he's fighting against a guy who's much more trained, so he's getting kind of beat up, getting some, but he uses his wits to outsmart the guy, and like that to me is much more entertaining than watching a guy basically just going a hero. Oh, I take one punch to the face, I'm down, and then he gets back up and he's like untouchable. Like it's not like Invasion USA.
This is Nick Cage's Under Siege moment.
Pretty much. You know, I'd say it's kind of like a Nicolas Cage hard to kill.
Interesting. I never thought of it that way. Maybe it's Nick Cage in. I don't know. Didn't he say
Remember
something about being above the law to the bad guy at the end?
something about that, but I know that he got the
Or was he
girl.
out for a kill?
I think he went out for a smoke as well.
Okay, so I'll wrap up by saying that, okay, decent film. Going forward, and a little bit 8 o'clock tonight, E and I are going to be doing the top 10, I believe, of the 1990s overall, not just of any particular decade, but for the entire decade, our top best films as we segue into more recent times. So be on the lookout for that link. Appreciate some of the feedback we've been getting and all the likes. I see the like button's been smashed and stomped like Nick Cage has jumped up and down 5, 6 times. That's awesome. The doctor and I do, on a more serious note, all I'm going to simply share with you guys is that we have some conspiracy news to share with you guys, some real life stories. We're just packaging it up now that we've gotten some clearance from some of the media outlets on some actual things we do, because as budding journalists, we actually like to cross reference and make sure that we have non fabricated media that we present to you guys. So we're going to have some documents and some pictures for some interesting things that tie into the Extreme Movie Show, but it's going to be the Extreme Conspiracy Show, and we're going to discuss some conspiracies that we've been
And
involved in.
and also the question is, Bad Boy, is he real or is he fake?
Well, with the cold weather that's coming that you've experienced, we'll have to talk about the effects on animals in both your area of the world and mine, and how they affect certain things. And I don't mean all the gangbangers down here in Pine Hill shooting things up. I'm talking about
I'm
temperature and time, because that's important that we keep in mind the climate when we talk about conspiracies.
all work and no play makes the doctor go crazy.
Yes. So the
We're
doctor,
at, we're having shining weather up here right now.
yes, you are. All right. So for the doctor, for myself, for E, for everybody involved in the Extreme Movie Show, stay extreme.
Extreme.
Extreme. Toodles.
Toodles.
Good night, everybody.